pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so as you can see, the heat is out of the building. It's going to be fixed on Monday, so you have a couple of space heaters running around. So that's what that is. We have cake. The carrot cake is because Matt's twin brother's birthday was a week ago. So we're celebrating his twin brother's birthday, and that's what's going on. Okay, first up, we have Visitor Citizens Forum. At this time, anyone with business before the council not scheduled on the agenda may speak to the council. Linda?
No one on Sunday.
No one on Sunday. All right, moving on. Public hearing. Public hearing is scheduled to provide an opportunity for citizen comment on the proposed thoroughfare plan. We are modifying the thoroughfare plan tonight. Does anyone have any comments on the thoroughfare plan, the existing plan, the future plan? Anyone have any comments? All right.
Close the public hearing on the thoroughfare plan.
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Second from Matt. All those in favor? All right, thank you. All right, next up we have the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda pursuant to self-explanatory will be enacted with one motion. Everybody happy with minutes? All right.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from August 15th, September 12th, October 3rd, and October 10th council meeting.
All right, so your motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Gail's got the second. All in favor? Thank you. All right, next up we have, first up on the regular agenda, we have consideration of the public services contract. We talked about this over a year. Linda, you've gone through it, you handled the negotiation.
I have, and Lee is here and can answer probably any questions that y'all have about the very strange change in the recycling, but it really is not as bad as it seems. It scared me to death, and we sat down and talked about it, and I get it. We have gone to quarterly vote. We are going to sit down and pick out the dates so that they don't coincide with holidays. We've got fixed rates over several years. It's going to renew after 5 years, which will take a lot of burden off of us for renegotiating. Everything we asked for, they were willing to step up and give us. So I don't see any problems with the contract.
And we put a, the other thing we put in there, which is new, we've never done this before, is there's actually a performance issue with the sludge hauls, right?
There is, yes, sir.
We've never done that before. We had some issues, and you guys agreed to
Yes, sir.
basically, what is it, we get a discount?
Yes, sir, 50% off, and we invoked that 2 weeks ago.
There you go. Okay. I don't have any, anybody have any questions, really?
Nope.
My only comment is
We've seen it a lot.
we probably need to get those quarterly bulk trash settled because January is normally a bulk trash.
We're gonna get together and set the dates and then get the calendar out so people are prepared.
I guess that was a question I had. You don't normally do like Christmas tree. What do people do? Is that an issue here?
Not really.
I don't know.
And I know that some cities, like I think Flower Mound has a specific disposal means for their Christmas trees. So I can find the details out of that and get back to you.
I mean, I just don't know.
It would be bulk. Yeah. But we can figure that out.
Any other questions?
I make a motion to approve the Republic Services contract.
All right, got a motion approved. I'm a little tired. All right, motion is second. All those in favor? All right, thank you, Linda. Nice job. Lee, appreciate all the work. We've been at this for quite a while. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we're good. All right, next up is consideration of the preliminary plat for the sanctuary at Sunset Cove. Todd is here. Todd, you want to just give us a quick update on that?
Sure. Thank you. So The preliminary plat was resubmitted with a letter addressing our comments on the first round of the submittal. So they addressed all of our comments or provided responses to all of our comments. And so, and it all looked to be in line with their current subdivision regulations. Other than that, there were a few comments that we made. We had 3 comments related to water and wastewater capacity studies that will be provided with future submittals of the detailed engineering plans, construction plans. So we had recommended approval of the preliminary plat with the conditions of the water wastewater plans to plan at a future time.
And the next step would be more detailed, the actual engineering drawings and
Right.
location of lift stations and all the nuts and bolts, right?
Right. Detailed design, roads, water, wastewater, grading, drainage.
And just so everybody knows, this is outside the city, and we are not the water provider, but our regulations require them, any subdivision, to have fire flow. So they have to, before that subdivision can be built, they have to have enough water to put out a fire for 2 hours. But we don't have to provide it, they have to have it, but we're not the water provider, so. Okay. Anybody have any questions? And again, this is just a preliminary plat. This is just a step to let them move ahead and start doing their engineering. Okay, so we need a motion to approve the preliminary plat for the sanctuary at Sunset Cove.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for sanctuary at Sunset Cove.
And a motion, Eric's got the second. All those in favor? All right, thank you very much. All right, Todd, appreciate it. Thank you, sir. It doesn't mean anything that Todd went way before you. Don't take that the wrong way. I can see you over there going, what? What's this? Okay. All right, next up, we basically have 2 parallel items. Consideration of professional services agreement with Land Plan, Sandhill Venture, and consideration of professional services agreement with Sanctuary at Sunset Cove. So what this is an agreement where they agree to provide for all of our professional services, engineering, legal services, financial services, everything relating to their own developments. You don't want to see the blizzard of emails where you take 2 different companies and 4 sets of attorneys and let them go through an agreement. But we have one unified agreement that everybody's now agreed to. And it's the same agreement for everybody. Okay, and so they're ready to go. I've already got emails sitting there saying, well, who to make the check out to. So this thing is ready to rock and roll. And we've done this before. This is not the first time we've done this. So what I'd like to do is what you're going to do is you're going to authorize me to execute a professional services agreement with Sam Hill. And authorize me to execute an agreement with. That's the motions that I need. Okay? Yeah.
So I believe that you're talking about item 4.
I know I skipped one probably. Yeah. I skipped 3 because I'm tired. So I just explained this. Let's do 4 and 5 anyway, and then we'll come back and do 3.
Which one are we doing now, land plan or sanctuary?
Let's do land plan first. Let's do 4.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with land plan.
Okay, so I have a motion to authorize me to execute the PSA. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Matt's got the second. All those in favor? Thank you. All right.
I make a motion for the mayor to execute the PSA with Sanctuary at Sunset Cove.
Perfect. All right, I have a motion. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, Matt's got the second. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. All right, back up to number 3. Consideration of resolution authorizing the creation of a public improvement district at Sanctuary at Sunset Cove. So this is again the area on the other side of the street. They need us to authorize them to have a special tax district. The process takes anywhere up to 8 months of lots of steps. Step 1 is just starting the process. It doesn't obligate us to anything. It just says that we're starting the process. So that's all this is doing. Later on, in several months, there will be public hearings, and we ultimately have to be the one to do the assessment. So we can always at a later date say, you know what, We don't want to do it. So, but you can't move forward until we do this. So they've requested we take this first step. Our attorneys have reviewed it and recommended we take this first step. Okay? All right? So, any questions on that?
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve that we,
It's a resolution. It's a resolution.
okay, make a motion that we approve the resolution for the creation of a public improvement district at Sanctuary at Sunset.
Okay, motion, do I have a second? Eric's got the second. All those in favor? Thank you very much. All right, next up, where am I going? Finally, here we go, okay. Thank you. Next up, we have Wayne Neighbors, he's here with a presentation of our audit for last fiscal year. And as Wayne gets ready, I want to thank Wayne. You know, we really busted our hump to get this thing done a month early. And Wayne really worked hard and pressed everything. Because of our bond issue coming up, we wanted to get the audit done as fast as possible. Normally we do it in December. You know, we prevent it, so we're a month early. And I really appreciate you, Wayne, pushing everybody aside and helping us out by getting through the audit. And it was,
Well, it's my pleasure. I mean, you know, there's certain times that you have to, you know, prioritize and make things a priority, and we certainly did this time. So, Mayor and Council, good evening. Thank you for having me here again this year. Wayne Neighbors, Neighbors CPA Services. I'm here to give you what you've all been waiting for, your audit results. Everybody's excited about the audit. You know. Come on. I'm probably the only one that enjoys this stuff. But I'm gonna start on page 1. That's your independent auditor's report in your blue binder. There are several paragraphs to this letter, this report. The first paragraph simply gives you the scope of the audit, which was for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2019. The second paragraph describes management's responsibility. Management is you, the city council, and the mayor. Your responsibility is for fair preparation and presentation of the financial statements, and to plan and implement internal controls sufficient to guard against any significant material deficiencies. My responsibility in the third paragraph is to express an opinion on your financial statements based on my audit. I have to use generally accepted auditing standards promulgated in the United States of America to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance that your financial statements are not materially misstated. The fourth paragraph is the opinion paragraph, which is the most important paragraph in the whole letter. This states, in my opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, each major fund and aggregate remaining fund, information of the town of Lakewood, Village, Texas, as of September 30th, 2019, and the respective changes in financial position and, when applicable, cash flows there for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. That means you have a clean audit. Other matters paragraph, there are certain things that the Governmental Accounting Standards Board requires us to include in an audit of a local government. It's called Supplementary Information. It has to do with the management's discussion and analysis in the front of the report, as well as budgetary comparisons that we include in the financial statements. It's important for you to know that even though we apply certain limited procedures, we have conversations with the management of the city to obtain a confidence level that the material that is supplied in this particular section of the report is reasonable, but we do not audit it and we don't go to that level. So you do have a clean audit, and we'll skip over to page 16. I'm going to point out several things that I like to emphasize that I think that are of particular importance to me and should be to you. So I'm going to go through a few things at summary levels, and then I'll open it up to questions, and we will spend as much or as little time as you want to going through the audit. On page 16, this is your balance sheet for your governmental funds. Your governmental funds, your general fund, and your MDD. The balance sheet gives you a snapshot of what your assets and liabilities are and what your reserves are for your governmental funds. If you look down towards the bottom where it says net, where it says fund balance, Linda, we need to go over to page 16 real quick.
Just on the walk around,
Right
right there on the top, sorry.
Just a little bit more, right there, okay. It's kind of maybe hard for you to see, but under fund balances at the bottom, we've got unassigned fund balance for the general fund of $267,977. That is considered to be your reserve. That's your equity. That's what's left over in reserve after all of your accounts closed from a revenue and expense perspective. That's what's left over. Now we use that number as a percentage of your operating expenses each year to determine what your percentage of reserve is. We recommend a 25% reserve for the general fund. Right now, that $267,977 represents 93% of your overall total expenditures for your general fund. So, you think, okay, what does that mean to us? We're way over the 25%. It means that you have the ability to use those funds if you need to without having to go out and finance things, okay? It's perfectly fine to draw down those fund balances if you need to use those fund balances to pay for something here in the city. It's perfectly fine to do that. You certainly don't want to build a war chest, but it's good to have those reserves in place because you never know when you're going to come into an economic downturn, okay? So that's what that number represents. Then we also look at, more so on the enterprise fund, but if you look up at your assets, I know it's a little difficult, but under the general fund, you've got total assets of $268,176, and down below you got total liabilities of $112. We like to see a 1-to-1 ratio for current assets to current liabilities. You've got a 2,900-to-1 ratio. Now, that is subject to change, rapidly with acquiring liabilities. So if you take on debt, additional, not debt, not in the general fund, but if you take on accounts payable or something like that, then that would change that ratio. But 2,900-to-1 is pretty strong. If we turn over to page 18, this is your budgetary comparison. Keep going. Page 18. There you go. Oh. That's oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Okay, so actually, let's go to page 20. I've already talked to you about this. This is your expenditures. So let's go over to page 20. This is your budgetary comparison. The thing that I want you to see here is that you had a positive variance both from a revenue and an expenditure perspective. Your revenues were stronger than budgeted by $8,400, and your expenses were less than budgeted by $8,200. So that's a really good variance. It means that you had very good controls over your expenditures during the year. And you were probably conservative, which you should be, with your budgeting of your revenues. On page 21, this is your enterprise fund or your proprietary funds, your water and sewer funds. The reason that they're called enterprise proprietary is because they operate more like a business operates. Okay, they're on a full accrual basis. They operate just like any other business in America would operate. What we look at here again is we look at the reserves, and down at the bottom under net position, and we only look at the unrestricted portion. We don't look at anything that's restricted in any way because that you can't pay the light bill with that. Unrestricted fund balance or net position is $143,881. Just real quick, we scroll to the next page, 22. Total operating expenses, $297,943. You have to take out your depreciation because that's a non-cash expense. That means your true expenses are $204,578. That $143,881 on the previous page represents 70% reserve. Now we recommend 33% in an enterprise fund. So that puts you well above the required reserve amount. Just as a point of interest, last year you were at 26%. So you rose, you increased your reserve in your enterprise fund by 124% year over year. We also look at current assets to current liabilities. Your current ratio in the water and sewer fund was 3.63 to 1. That's still very strong, good liquidity. On page 32, just want to emphasize that these are your receivables. This is what you had at the end of the year that was still owed to the city. About $2,700 in your general fund, the MDD $1,283, almost $26,000 in the water and sewer fund. And by the way, congratulations to the mayor and Linda and Summer for a lot of hard work this last year in determining a problem with the municipal billing software. We have had a very difficult time getting things to tie out exactly over the last few years. It wasn't that we were off so far that we couldn't go through with the audit, but it just bothered us that it was off. We didn't know why. And they determined, with the help of the programmers, that there was an error and things were not being recorded in the system correctly. And so we actually made an adjustment to your books of about a little over $11,000 this year because the receivables were understated in the prior year because of that error. So that was a very good find on their part. You know, one of the things that you do have here is you've got good segregation of duties, you've got good controls in place, and that's just an example of that. The next thing I want to cover is the report that I gave to you, aside from your blue binder. This is my report to you with my findings on the audit. We look at certain qualitative aspects during the audit, not just quantitative. We look at practices, accounting practices, making sure that you're adhering to generally accepted accounting principles, making sure that your books are adjusted for prior year audits, making sure that your accounting entries are correct and made timely. We look for any trouble, any problems that we had obtaining documents that we needed during the audit. We log whether there's any uncorrected misstatements from the prior year audit. And then we look at record keeping and the ability, excuse me, to find what we need in a timely manner. And we had absolutely no problems doing the audit. Everything was in great shape. All the records were exactly where they were supposed to be. When we asked for something, we got it timely, and everything tied out really, really well. So you actually, this is one of the few times I've ever had an audit where we did not end up with some sort of an over or understatement on something, but you ended up exactly right, so you're to be commended for that. And with that, I will turn it over to you. You can ask me any questions you'd like to. I'm sure that you've had plenty of time to look over the audit and have it all memorized.
So Wayne, you know, we're gonna be going into the debt market to do another road project. In my opinion, the financials are very strong for S&P that's gonna do our rating. How would you, I know you're not an S&P rating.
Yes, I mean, you know, I can't tell you what S&P is going to say, but everything that's indicated here is very strong. I mean, you've got good controls, you've got good liquidity, your systems are strong, you've got good viability, you've got long-term prospects, your growth potential is there. Those are the things that I know that the S&P looks for, you know, but nobody can read their mind, but I don't know of any reason why you would get an unfavorable rating.
Any questions? Eric, anything?
How long did it take to put this together?
Oh, probably about 60 hours.
A lot of reading.
Mr. Indiana? You're still looking? Does anybody in the audience have a question? Yes.
How did you increase your, by the 124%, how'd you do that?
The way we did that was we've been expanding the system. We've been expanding it, you know, a lot of the water system. And we finally reached, well, we're now at economies of scale where the water system only ran at about 40% capacity all during the summer. So because we've expanded all the facility, it's just much more efficient now. And the actual cash flow, Wayne and I joke about this, we're probably the only two people that ever look at cash flow statements. But I look at the cash flow. So the cash flow from our water system after expenses, it was $60,000 2 years ago. Last year it was $96,000. This year it was $191,000. That's the growth because of the efficiencies. The last 2 years we've been really making the system much bigger. And so now we're getting...
Your revenues for your water and sewer system were up 18%, and your expenses were down 19%. Now those expenses being down are evidence of control, but it's also evidence of new infrastructure being in the ground, less repairs and maintenance, that sort of thing. So it lowers your cost of operating.
We really got ahead of the older equipment, so we just didn't have the repairs that we normally have.
Hey Mark, on the expense side, I noticed that the savings were primarily the result of something dealing with public works. Was there something that you guys had planned to do that you didn't do?
You know, I think it just might be like city hall maintenance and mowing, and I think that's what a lot of, and some of that's, I think, building inspections. I think it's, I forget what's collapsed into public works, but I think it's...
I didn't actually do a comparison on that particular item to last year, so as far as knowing how much it changed.
Yeah.
Did you save on any contracts for
I mean, I know we switched like the alarm company contract, and we did several, I think it was just the aggregation of a lot of small victories there. I mean, it was a very good year.
One of the things people don't realize is when we do an audit, we don't audit your books necessarily to find out why an expense decreased, unless it decreases in a strange manner. The variance, it's an outlier or something like that. And then we start probing that. Otherwise, we do, from a revenue and expense standpoint, we do sampling. We pull invoices. We look at the invoices to make sure that they're coded correctly, that the account coding on them has got them in the right spot on the P&L, and that they actually represent dollars that went out of the city. From a revenue standpoint, we trace deposits. We compare those deposits against the revenues on the books and the receivables on the books to determine whether they're reasonable.
I'll just say one thing and then I'll let you go. I looked up a bunch of numbers historically. So in 2014, when we did our roads the last time, our fund balance was 99% of expenses. That's how much we had in the bank. So we had basically had a year's worth of expenses squirreled away before we started the roads. And we're at 93% now. We were 68% last year, so we're right where we kind of need to be. So this is right down Main Street to do the road project. We're absolutely right on track. All right, if there's any...
I do have a question. So on the revenue side of things, you mentioned unrestricted and restricted, right? So that makes sense. From a restricted standpoint, is that just the MDD dollars, essentially? Or do we have other things that are considered
it's only
restricted?
In the governmental section,
Debt service.
basically that's it, yes.
It's
Just
just
a
the
little bit of
MDD,
debt service.
okay, so that is it.
Okay. Now what we need a motion to accept, is that right, we're going to accept the audit report? You guys have to accept it.
Yes, I would appreciate that.
I make a motion to accept the auditor's report.
Okay, a motion to accept the audit report. I'll second. Matt's got the second. All those in favor? Very good. Wayne, again, appreciate your hard work.
You bet. Congratulations on your new roads. Hope everything goes well, and congratulations on that low interest rate you got on those bonds.
Yeah, we're doing good. Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. No, not Brittany, not yet. She's still hanging in there. All right, next up, we have consideration and approval of a resolution relating to establishing the town's intention to reimburse itself for prior lawful expenditures and funds relating to the construction of various town improvements, including proceeds of tax exempt. Okay, under the IRS code, if we want to reimburse ourselves prior to issuing bonds for a project, under the IRS code, we have to tell everybody we're going to reimburse ourselves for the engineering that we paid for prior to the bonds being issued. We've spent a little over $100,000 already on geotech, survey work, engineering, and we intend to take that money back out of the bond proceeds, put it back in our general fund to increase our cash. And so this is just a thing that the bond counsel, the attorneys have told us we need to